All right, well, good morning. Appreciate you all coming out. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rob Vandenheuvel, California Dairies Inc. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know we got some folks still filing in, but this group's got to get up at Turlock for a 2 o'clock meeting, so we're going to respect everybody's time and keep this thing on schedule. But I was asked to make a few comments to open up the meeting, and so what I wanted to do is just provide a little bit of context around this issue. We're going to have a lot of discussion about the meat of the issue and quota here over the next 2 hours, but when you get an emotionally charged issue, and quota is obviously an emotionally charged issue, you tend to view it with a very narrow scope. You look at it with what did this cost me last month if you're a non-quota holder, or what if you are a quota holder, what did I gain in terms of my milk check this month or this past 6 months? And that's fine. I mean, that's important. And that shapes what your opinion is of this program. But it's only part of the story. And I think it's important to remember also the context of some other items that are going on at the same time. And I think that can help shape opinions about where we go from here as well. And so I take you back just a couple of years, 2011, 12. We were in a state order that was frankly undervaluing the milk everybody in this room produced. We didn't like it as an industry. We went to the secretary and asked for hearing after hearing after hearing with limited results. We went to the Capitol, held a rally on the steps of the Capitol, marched to the secretary's office, no results. Filed a lawsuit, tried to force the secretary to make some changes, no results, and tried legislation. And so what ultimately that led to was this industry moving towards a federal order. But that didn't happen overnight either. A lot of steps were taken to make sure all the various pieces came together before we went to that federal order process. And the first thing that happened was we went to Congress and started working on language that could accommodate a quota program, because we knew even many, many years ago that quota needed to be a consideration. It's a very unique program with a lot of financial ramifications on this industry, and that needed to have a path forward in its current form into a federal order in order to really make the federal order a decision we could make here in the state. And so that happened back in 2013 in the Farm Bill. Then you move into a federal order hearing, and in 2017 what we learned was that USDA wasn't willing to run a quota program, but they would accommodate it. So we had to figure out, okay, now how do we continue running this quota program? And that led to the Producer Review Board coming up with the QIP. The QIP, I think everyone needs to understand what the QIP is and what the QIP isn't. It is a path forward for quota. It is not a guarantee that quota is never discussed, challenged, or revised down the road. The PRB, Producer Review Board, was very clear on that. They had limits to how much review they were willing to accept. They didn't want to have to re-vote on this every 5 years, which was one of the proposals. But there was built into the QIP levels of review, whether it was a petition, whether it was a survey every 5 years. And so that's where we're here today, is there is a significant interest in having that discussion now. Now, why is the co-ops involved in this? Some might wonder. We, like the trade associations and other organizations in the state, have members on both sides of this issue. Quota holders, non-quota holders, and everywhere in between. The co-ops have not taken a position, nor have the trade association. So we don't have a policy position on this. What we are supportive of is a process, and that's what you're seeing here today. We're supportive of a process that is inclusive, that everybody who wants to come to a meeting and share input, provide an idea, provide feedback, has that opportunity to do so. A process that's transparent, and also a process that's structured, that we know at the end of the day there's the potential for action items and to move this industry forward. It's not going to be a study that sits on a shelf, and it's never utilized. And so that's why we're here today. We appreciate everybody coming out and participating and keeping an open mind. Today is not about fighting and talking about what you like, what you don't like. What you're going to hear today's about sharing ideas. And so we're really excited to have everybody engage. So with that, I'm going to ask Craig Gordon, who is representing the Stop Quip organization, if he'd make a few comments here in front before we start the meeting.
First off, I want to thank Rob. He's been very instrumental in putting this together. Dino put a lot of work in this thing. It's a very tough issue. We're family, we're friends. We Never had anything quite like this, but it's an issue. It's costing some people a lot of money, and we want to deal with this question. And yesterday down in Chino, I thought was excellent. Everyone got together in that room, 100% quota holders, guys with zero, and I felt that we left there together just talking, communication. If you're all pissed off at each other, you get nowhere. And we want to exchange ideas, and it's a very important issue for a lot of people. It's one of the toughest issues I think we probably think about tackling. So today, yesterday went really well in Chino. I hope it goes as well here. If there's any questions you need to ask of me or anything, I'll be here afterwards, but give this guy a shot. He's really good, quite remarkable yesterday, what he got done, and so is Matt. So thank you for all coming, and turn it over to you, Dino. Good job. Thanks, Greg. Flip the slide.
That one. Okay, thank you guys all for coming. I'm Dino Giacomazzi. I'm representing the United Dairy Families of California today. As you probably have heard, this organization was founded specifically to create this opportunity to have a conversation within the industry about quota. All the work that has happened up until now is leading to this day, and this is the kickoff of a process. And this process has 5 components to it. Today we are in what's called the think tank, and the purpose of this meeting today is to think outside the box, to throw out every possible idea. After today, we're going to go into another meeting, which is going to be called producer feedback, which is going to be a meeting like this, but we're going to talk about what comes out of this meeting today. Then from there, we're going to do an analysis process, looking into different ideas that are coming out of this meeting and the next meeting, and to determine what are the economic and legal ramifications of whatever these proposals might be. And then after we look at those and we have sort of a deep dive into what those ideas might have in terms of impact, and we've answered all the questions we can answer, then we're going to present those to you for a decision. And the decision-making process is going to be collaborative. This isn't going to be a blue ribbon panel. It's not going to be a backroom deal. Everybody is going to be part of the decision-making. It's going to be transparent and open, and it's going to have to do with probably more meetings. We're going to be doing surveys, and there's going to be ways that we're going to determine which of these ideas are the most popular and the most likely to pass, because there's no point in spending time on something that nobody wants to do. And then once we achieve this industry consensus, then we will implement it in whatever way is necessary. If it takes a referendum, we'll do a referendum. If it requires legislative action, we'll do legislative action. We will do whatever it takes to implement the plan. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Martin Bozic. Here he is.
Shortest introduction ever. Good morning, everyone. I am extremely humbled to be here. I understand this is a very important topic. I'm going to do my best to serve you to the best of my abilities. I'm going to spend just a minute or two introducing myself and my partner Matt. Stand up so people can see. Matt Gould, brightest young dairy economist in the country of his generation. And who we are, why are we here, what do we want to do? Okay, so first a little bit about me. My day job is as a professor at the University of Minnesota. I teach agribusiness finance, have bankers come to my class. I teach risk management, but I'm not an ivory tower economist. I'm not a classical professor, like that waxes poetic forever on something. I like to solve problems. So the last problem I tried to solve is the risk management. So we created dairy revenue protection. Some of you may have heard about it, 30 billion pounds around the country in just 8 months since it was introduced. Over $100 million in premium, $6 billion in liabilities covered. Some of it here in California as well. Farm Bureau did all the politics, I'm the plumber. I do the statistics, models, maintain the servers. I don't mean to bother you with Dairy RP. The reason I mention it is so that I hopefully come across as a very pragmatic, practical guy who has an open mind, willing to listen, and then willing to work hard to put the numbers that make sense. This is my wife there, and a 12-year-old adopted son from her first marriage. She's 8 months pregnant, as you can see. She's quite huge. I never put any personal photos in any of my presentations. I did it here today because I want to create atmosphere in this room where even if you strongly disagree with the person sitting at your table, I hope that you will recognize that whatever position they come from, they just want to do well for their family like you want to do for your family. We can disagree strongly and still empathize with the other person's position. This is my number at the bottom in an email. We would prefer if you put your proposals and ideas and comments on the cards today or online, but I am available. I'm going to take your call. I rarely sleep, so you can mostly reach me any time of the week. I work weekends as well. By the way, I'm originally from Croatia. You can tell my accent. It's not Minnesota. I recently became a citizen. This morning was my first ever in my life Pledge of Allegiance. I almost teared up. So it's a... So enough about me, this is about you. And before that, Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'll just take maybe 30 seconds. My name is Matt Gould. I've worked with Marn on a number of projects. I'm originally a farm kid from Western New York, and today I wear a number of hats as a market analyst. But I work with a number of dairy companies across the supply chain. Here I put a few of them up there from California. Just the one thing that I want to emphasize is that we're about practicality, we're about action. As Marn said, we are not ivory tower. So, we're really looking forward to making progress, and that's why we're engaged in this process.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so in parallel with this process, Craig and his team are pursuing a petition. This process is not designed to slow them down. This is not a delay process of any kind. We are looking for a consensus solution, and don't trust my promise. You barely know me. Trust my incentives. I don't get paid by an hour, and I'm out of here by November 1. So I really want to get this done, or at least do my part really well, get all the numbers down, do all the economic analysis as fast as possible, ensuring that everybody feels heard, that all ideas are examined that are feasible. Dino already outlined the process, so I won't belabor the point. Just to know that we are here today, think tank. Today, and only today we measure success by the number of ideas that we generate between now and noon, or 11, okay. End up being noon, yeah. So number of ideas. So as we go around the tables later, even if you disagree with something, if you haven't heard of it before, if it's new, praise that person either aloud or at least inside your heart. Praise them for participating in the process and coming up with ideas. That's going to help us find a solution. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about how we got here. Not for the purpose of giving you a history lesson, but for the purpose of emphasizing that whenever we found a solution in the past, whether it's 69, 94, 2018, whenever we found a solution, it was by forward-looking and making sure that we cater to the economic incentives of everybody that we needed at the table. Going back and just rehashing the history without forward-looking, realizing here we are today and forward-looking, we will not get the solution. We need to be forward-looking. So what happened in 1969? Back in the day, everybody had a contract with a plant, and they got paid based on what that plant offered them. There were minimum prices, but there were kickbacks as well, some of them illegal. It was a situation that sucked. So they said, okay, well, let's go with the pooling. How do you bring everyone on the table, to the table if you want to pool milk? Well, you say, okay, those guys that already had contracts with fluid milk plants from before will pay you extra, at least for a few years, so that you don't suffer in those early days as we move towards pooling. That's how we got Quota. Quota was the instrument to make sure that nobody is worse off after we introduced pooling. The intent was always that within a few years, as the fluid milk sales rise, that all the producers would be equalized. In other words, the intent was always that Quota will only matter for a brief period of time and not after that. It was introduced as a transition instrument. The most important point is that they needed to find a solution that brings everyone to the table. And the Quota was a way to bring everyone to the table. So that's 1969. Then fast forward to 1994. I'm skipping over a lot of history here. But 1994, what happened there? Well, back in the 80s, back in the late 70s, early 80s, some Midwest producers were really, really successful in lobbying the federal government for crazy high support prices. And what did California, being very progressive, did? They're like, you want more milk? You'll get more milk. You know, we'll make cheese, we'll make butter for as long as Uncle Sam wants to buy. And then, after a decade of that, feds lowered the support prices. And being an over-based producer in the state of California was no longer as profitable. We wanted to help them. The state said, okay, if you guys can figure it out, we would be willing to lift, to increase class 1, 2, and 3 prices. But if they didn't change anything else, all of that additional money would go to quota producers. So what did the quota producers want? They were afraid that the fluid milk sales would start going down. In fact, it happened between 92 and 94. The solution was found by fixing the differential at $1.70 plus regional adjustments. Everybody got something out of the deal. The quota guys got the security against declining fluid sales. The over-based producers got more money after they increased class 1, 2, and 3 prices. Now, in every one of these instances, there were follow-ups, there were unintended consequences. That's a topic for another discussion. My point here today is that the reason they got this done is because they brought everyone to the table and they gave something to everybody. They catered to forward-looking economic incentives. And that's what we need to do today and during this process. 2018, again, many ways to tell this story. One way to tell the story is that after many decades of rapid growth, California figured out we are now about peaked. The dairy production is not going to increase dramatically as before, so we don't need the processors to be so incentivized to come here and build all the new plants that we had in the past. So it was time to increase the part of the revenue going to producers. The state didn't want to do it. You went to the feds. You got it done. AMS didn't allow you to reblend quota. What was the path forward? The quit. Again, at the time, the solution was designed to cater to everyone. Everybody gets a higher price from federal order than the state order, and the quota people get to keep their quota, now changed from the integrated pooling to quit. Three situations, 3 solutions. In each solution, the consensus was forward-looking economic incentive. I know that sounds like a broken record, but it's really important that we keep that in mind. We cannot find a solution if we look backwards. We'll have to look forward from this point on. How do you build a supermajority? So what's next? What's the next challenge? For many, many years, quota was about 520, 530, 540, and then in 2018, early 2019, went down to 300. Why? Because the risk profile of quota changed. Before the change to QIP, it was at least perceived that if you vote out the quota, you're going back to pre-1969, you're going back to pre-pooling, you're deregulated with all the hazards that that brings. Once you have introduced the federal order and QIP, you have separated those 2 issues. You can have the pooling without quota, you can have the quota without pooling. That changed the risk profile of quota. That changed the perceived probability that quota will indeed be voted out. And the price in the market, don't believe me, don't believe my theories. Believe the price in the market. This reflects your consensus on the likelihood of programs substantially being changed over the next few years. So why didn't we change quota before? I have one slide and hopefully will tell you that story. Back in the 1985, about half of the state production was under quota. That means that those producers that had substantially more than 50% quota, they were the one receiving money from the system, and those that had more than 50% quota, they were net payers to the quota system. That fraction went down decade after decade after decade as manufacturing production grew and quota pounds did not really get increased. That's the goal. Those are the golden bars. Now let me talk about the green bars. The green bars answer this question: who do you need in your coalition if you wanted to terminate quota and if everybody just votes their cash flow? Everybody comes to the vote and everybody votes their cash flow. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm not saying that that's how it will happen. I'm just doing a thought experiment here. What would happen if that was the case? If that was the case, in 1985, you would need everyone that has 65% quota or less to meet the thresholds that are in the bill. 50% producer, 65% sold. When the green bar is much above golden bar, you don't have the vote, because you need someone in your coalition whose narrowly defined economic interests are to keep quota around. So 1985, you see the difference was about 15%. You didn't have a vote to eliminate quota. 1995, you still don't have the votes, but now the spread is 13%. Fast forward 10 more years, 2005, you still don't have the vote. The spread is only 6%. And we find ourselves in 2019, and you can't quite tell which one is higher. Yes, the chart shows the green bar are a little bit higher, but this is imprecise science. This is at most showing you the direction in which we're going, or we're going. Okay, so let's put it this way. The black line is the threshold that you need to cross to have the supermajority necessary to modify quota. Let's say eliminate quota. This band is the percent of milk solids that are cash flow negative. So when this band goes above the black line, you have the supermajority necessary to overturn quota. And you can see that for many, many years, we weren't even close to being there. And then for the last few years, we seem to be around there, but there is sufficient uncertainty that no side can take, yep, if we have a referendum, it's going to pass. Or, yep, if we have a referendum, it's going to fail. Why do I torture you with the statistics? Because in order to have a consensus, whether you want the quota to go away or you want the quota to stay here forever, you have to be uncertain about the outcome of unilateral referendum to eliminate. If you were dead certain that such a referendum would never pass, you would be better off doing crops this morning. Why come here, right? If you were dead certain that such referendum would pass, the quota will be eliminated. Why engage in a consensual deliberations and all that? Just pursue your path. Precisely because we have this genuine uncertainty regarding any unilateral action. It may happen, it has good chance of happening, it may not happen, it has good chance of not happening. Precisely because we have uncertainty, we have a true window of opportunity for consensus. So I'm not basing my message to you this morning on any metaphysical concepts. This is hardcore economics, right? If everybody just voted their cash flow, everybody should be at the table today thinking hard how to find a solution that works for most people, or everybody. Because if you don't, you have a lot to lose. If you don't, your assessment may stay as high as it is right now for decades to come. If you don't, your quota may go down to zero. If you work together, you may find something that you're not too happy about, but you'll make by. So our role today isn't to tell you what to do. Our role today and for the next 2 months is to help you think through this, to give you numbers that hopefully you will trust. I will not tell you what to do. I will not tell you this is the best solution. But for every idea that you tell me you really need to dig into this, Martin, this is a good idea, we think, we want to understand if this can fly. Matt and I will do our best to look into it, to put numbers around it, to tell you what the consequences would be, what the impacts would be, can it be done? So, the most of today will be about you, your ideas. But before we ask you for your ideas, I want to set the ground game. First, again, reminder, rules of engagement. Praise new thinking, not just the thinking that you agree with. I don't like the word brainstorming. Brainstorming is usually when I have it, I don't sleep enough and I have good days, and then in the evening I feel like storm in my head. So this is the way I phrased it. Leave no stone unturned, but throw no stones. Keep that in mind over the next hour or so. We measure success by the number of new ideas generated today. Number, not the, whether you like the idea, but how many new stuff we have uncovered. I frankly learned a lot yesterday, I really mean it. There were some things that I heard before, but there were some things that I've never heard before, and I would probably never have heard them if we did not engage in genuine, respectful, engaged meeting that we had in Ontario. So before I ask you to put your thinking cap on, I'm going to share with you some of the ideas we've heard so far. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm not going to go through all the details, just some broad strokes what we heard already. So you can split the solutions into two big classes. The solutions that require Sacramento and the solutions that we can do on our own. So solutions that we need the legislature to pass a bill to enable it, to stand behind it, and the solutions that we can do within the current legislative framework. Within the current legislative framework, you can again split the ideas into those that permanently leave QIP in place and those that, whether immediately or eventually, lead to a situation where we have no quota. So if you want to leave a QIP permanently in place, you can either do nothing, or maybe you can lower the differential and then just keep it at a lower level that's maybe more palatable, so there's not that much uproar about it. If you want the solutions that eliminate QIP, you can either immediately terminate it, or you can sunset it over a period of time, and then there are a number of ways that you can do the sunset over a number of years. If you want to engage in Sacramento, then we have some interesting ideas that we can pursue if we can get them to work with us. For example, we can do a quota buyout, some sort of bond. We can do the self-funded quota retirement plan. We can even, so this actually happened in Missouri. True story. Missouri said, okay guys, dairy industry in Missouri, you can have half of the proceeds on all the sales taxes on dairy products sold in Missouri. And you can use that for scholarships, you can use that for MPP subsidies, etc. It was a one-off deal. But that's what they did there. If we could get the state to do that, then we could use their funds, for example, for a quota retirement fund. It may not be the most likely outcome, but today, and just today, it's not about what's most likely. It's about leaving no stone unturned. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions, one at a time. And you will work in groups. So the people that you're sitting next to, that's your group. The first question